Hi, my name's Rebecca Doherty. I'm an educational psychologist, and I'm going to talk a little bit about something that we call co-regulation. I'm just going to go ahead and screen share, hopefully, for a moment. Okay, so co-regulation is when we use our own emotional energy and effect and state to influence and affect the emotional state of another person, either consciously or unconsciously. We know as human beings that we pick up on the vibes and the emotional tone of people around us. We know what it's like to go in somewhere and there'd be a good atmosphere or not a good atmosphere. So we're thinking about keeping that understanding in mind to use that when we're interacting with other people, particularly young people that we're working with or that live in our homes with us. So if we're interacting with a young person who is in an uncomfortable emotional state, maybe they're feeling quite angry, or also really if they're feeling quite shut down and maybe sad and seeming quite closed off and non-communicative, what do we do in those situations? Sometimes we might feel like we want to get to the bottom of it. We really want to help the young person. So we might start asking lots of questions to try and find out what's going on so that we know what we can do. We know what we can do to help. And sometimes that can lead to the young person becoming even more frustrated and shutting down even further. And then we might start to feel frustrated as well. So we're going to sort of think about the idea that sometimes we might just want to park that for a minute, that sense of trying to get to the bottom of it, and allow ourselves, our own emotional energy, to get in sync with the young person so that we can co-regulate together, getting in a synced emotional state. And then that can support the young person to move with us to a more comfortable emotional state. Okay. So we're working on the assumption that human beings, because it's true, human beings do co-regulate. Particularly young people, they don't come into the world able to independently regulate emotions. That's not what happens. They learn to independently regulate a little bit, or rather their nervous systems learn to regulate a little bit because of the experience they have interacting with adults who can co-regulate with them and give them the experience of going from an uncomfortable state to a comfortable state again. So when we're trying to do that with a young person, we're going to be thinking about matching some of their emotional affect, that's their emotional expression, and their energy, attuning to them where they're at, not where we want them to be, or not straight away where we think they should be. We're not trying to cheer them up straight away. We're matching their emotional energy and affect, attuning to them, and then gradually we can sort of start to move a little bit. We're going to think about something called indirect talking. So if we're interacting with the young person when they're in an uncomfortable state, sometimes it's helpful to, because it's nice to chat, it's nice to talk, rather than asking direct questions, which can feel quite intrusive, particularly if a young person is really shut down and uncommunicative, and they start to feel the pressure from the adult that they're supposed to be communicating because they're being asked questions, but because they're in a bit of a state, they can't even think to formulate what the answer might be anyway, let alone want to communicate it to us. But what we can do instead of doing that is just kind of talk aloud, just indirectly talk, but not necessarily expecting anything back from the young person. So we might just talk about what's happening around us. Just sort of look out the window and just think, oh gosh, it's nice actually. It's starting to get a little bit nicer right now. I was thinking it was going to be rainy today, but it's not looking too bad. And using that kind of calm, emotional energy, just sort of talking a little bit about what's going on, maybe mentioning how the child is seeming. Oh gosh, I can see you sort of feeling like you don't really want to talk right now, and that's okay. Using that kind of interaction with the young person might let them sort of let down their guards a little bit. Sometimes we use the term "I wonder" rather than asking a direct question. that feels less intrusive to the young person than if we say, what is the matter? Come on, if you just explain to me what the matter is. That can feel quite intrusive. And like we've said, they might not in that state be able to verbalize what they think anyway. But if we use the term I wonder, it does the same job in a way as a question. So we can say something like, oh, I wonder if you might just be feeling a little bit sad because of what happened yesterday. I don't know. You might be. That's if that is the case, then that's okay. So what we've done there is we've effectively, if we have asked a question, because if the child wants to answer and they feel ready, they can. They might put us right. They might say, no, that's not what I'm thinking about at all. And that's okay, because we've got some engagement and we're getting from them what they're thinking. We're also letting them know that they are in our thoughts. We are trying, we're curious, we're trying to work out what's going on for them. But it doesn't feel intrusive. We're not suggesting that we've got the right answer, because we're saying, I wonder, maybe. So it communicates to them that we're keeping them in mind, we're thinking and imagining what their thoughts and feelings are. We're showing empathy towards them. We're trying to sort of work out, how are they feeling right now? And it gives the opportunity to the child to answer if they want to. It's helpful to be aware that often we use this sort of benchmark of 5 to 10 minutes, of how long it takes for two people to get in sync in terms of their emotional state. Might be much longer than that, but that's kind of like a benchmark. That's helpful to think about if we're sitting down with a child who seems very shut down, non-communicative, that, okay, this isn't going to happen after a couple of sentences, but they might start to let the guard down within about 5 to 10 minutes. After that point, we might tentatively make a sort of a playful, jokey comment, just to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. But we're not in a race, and we're just bearing in mind that, human beings are what they are, and part of this is biological. It's going to take that amount of time for us to sync our emotional and neurological states. Okay, so let's have a think. I'm just going to stop sharing that there about what that might look like. Okay, so we're thinking, let's just say we're imagining that there's a young person who's feeling quite shut down and uncommunicative, and we've tried saying, what's the matter? And we're getting nothing back. Maybe they're really quite sort of shut down. So rather than us coming in with a completely different emotional state, come on, what is it? Come on, tell me what the matter is. Come on, tell me what the matter is. If we feel that, we really want to know what the matter is, and we really want to know what we can do to support. But if we just think, okay, I'm just going to park that a little bit. This is the emotional state that the young person is in right now. I'm going to see if I can just sort of get onto their emotional energy and get in sync with them a little bit. And then we can tentatively, in 10 minutes or so time, think about, blimey, that was funny, wasn't it? And make the odd little comment to just help them to move a little bit to a comfortable state. But if we wanted to use ourselves as a vehicle for moving the young person from uncomfortable to comfortable, we're going to start where they are, because these are the emotions they're having, and these are the emotions that they need to regulate. So we're going to start with that point and then move them from there. So if they're in that kind of shut down state, we're coming in and we're like, oh God, I think you're not very happy today. That's how it seems to me. I don't know. I wonder. We don't need to give loads of verbal, because if somebody is in an uncomfortable emotional state, and you'll know yourselves, you can't formulate really very clearly what you think and feel. Nobody says their most logical, rational things when they're feeling emotionally wound up, either in anger or feeling shut down. And actually, because the part of your brain that processes verbal language is not working in the same way that it might be when you're feeling socially engaged, processing of lots of verbal language can actually be quite irritating. So we don't need to be giving a continuous running commentary. We can say a few things to keep things normal, and to sort of let them know we're thinking about them, but we can have pauses and just chill. It's not a race. Okay, so if they're in this sort of shut down state, this is where we're meeting them, in that state. And we can go in like, oh, See, you're just Not really feeling like you want to be doing things right now. Okay. Sometimes using those sort of sighs can be helpful as well. I guess things can be quite difficult sometimes. Yeah, it can be. So I know that doesn't look like much, and it isn't, but that's possibly quite different from what we might sort of intuitively want to do, coming in at a completely different point. So we're starting to sort of match their energy. Yeah, okay. Sometimes using those sorts of things as fillers, not because we have to fill the gaps, but to keep a sense of interaction there. We don't need to use a lot of verbal language. We can use sighs and vocalizations as well to communicate that kind of energy. Although we're doing it in a regulated way, the child might be feeling a little bit dysregulated, but we're matched in their emotional energy. We're not ourselves becoming shut down. We're just matching the energy where they're at. But we're regulated ourselves. And then tentatively, after that sort of time frame, maybe sort of 10 minutes or so, tentatively make a little slightly more upbeat comment, slightly more playful comment, because playfulness and humour, not sarcasm, but playfulness and humour can be really helpful to support a child to feel engaged with us and to be able to move on from their state. Okay, I'm going to go back to screen sharing that last slide really quickly. Okay, so these are the sorts of things that we're thinking about in co-regulation. We're using ourselves as a vehicle to match where the child is at and to help them regulate, help them go from uncomfortable emotional states to slightly more comfortable. But we're starting where they are, matching their emotional affects, their expression, energy, attuning to them, getting in sync with them. We can use some indirect talking, not asking them lots of questions, but sort of commenting a little bit, maybe on how they seem without judgment. It's fine for them to be like as they are. And then maybe just a little bit about what's happening around us to sort of keep things light. I wonder a little bit. Well, I wonder if you're feeling like that because it's just really irritating when people are just on your back. Maybe, I don't know. I sometimes feel like that. We can say those sorts of things. And then just sort of monitor how they seem. If they're allowing that, can carry on. Just sort of have pauses to sort of allow them to process what's happening. And then after 5 to 10 minutes or so, we can think about just moving the energy on a little bit. Okay, so that's, I guess, kind of what we mean by co-regulation. It's something we all do naturally, and we all pick up on the emotional tone and affects of the people around us. But sometimes being aware of it and aware of how we as human beings are just wired that way, our nervous systems get in sync with each other, but they take a little bit of time to do that sometimes. So we can use that information if we're trying to support another person, maybe our own child, maybe a child that we work with, or an adult as well, to help them feel empathized with when they're in a difficult emotional state and give them experience of moving from uncomfortable to comfortable again. Okay, there we are. Thank you.